Just 1 second here. Now going live on IG. Everywhere else is good to go.
That's fine. I'm not as handsome, but we'll make do. Yeah, so I started my day with a 5-hour meeting, and then I've been hour on the hour up until this moment. But I love it. I love what I do. I love every second of it. So I'm ready, man. I'm energized. I love spreading this knowledge. Awesome. Awesome. Well, it goes without saying you're the pro on the finance side. So I love how when we do this, you blend in the financial knowledge into the structures and systems that I build. For those of you who have not seen any of my content or know me, I am Andre Pennington. I've been an attorney for 20 years. I do estate planning, asset protection. I do own an investment firm, an insurance brokerage, a tax strategy firm. My goal in life was to make sure that the Pennington last name did not start over when I passed away. And I'm one of those people that maybe some of you are like me, where it felt like I was by myself building brick by brick, and some clown would come and knock all the bricks down, and I have to start over because I wasn't knowledgeable about protection. I wasn't knowledgeable about tax strategy or how finance worked. Well, I'm going to add in the piece of protection right now. And then, like Depot said, he's going to show you how he views it from the financial standpoint. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to jump into a diagram, right? And I'm going to just walk you through how I look at it. All right. So the first thing we're going to do, we have a blank diagram here. All right. So we're going to start out with a clean slate. And what I'm going to do is put in the foundation. The foundation of protection is protecting what our family something happens to us. Right? So the foundation is a revocable living trust. Right? And we're going to start building asset protection off of this. But this one box here. This is where we put in our home, we put in our assets to make sure that they transfer to our family after our death without probate. Right? And every state's a little bit different, so I'm talking generally. right? If you have this need, we're going to look at your state's rules and figure out when it's best to do this. But most times, almost always, a trust beats a will, right? I'm going to knock down one of the biggest misconceptions that most people hold, which is if I have a will, I avoid probate. And that's the exact opposite, as a matter of fact. If I have a will, I'm saying I want to go through probate. In my state of Arizona, go ahead, Deepo. Okay, great, good. So in my state, up until this year, I resigned my commission, but I was a part-time Superior Court probate judge. Right. And the three things that stand out to me about probate are this. Number one, it takes a long time for no reason. Right. So a year in court. Number two, it's expensive for no reason. And then number three, and most importantly, how we leave our family to deal with their grief in probate is way worse than if they have an out-of-court administration, right? So this isn't a seminar about this one particular trust, but that's the foundation, okay? And wherever we end, it's going to dump into that foundation to make sure that that transfer on our passing goes to our family seamlessly, okay? So now that we have that bucket, right? A lot of time asset protection is going to start with if we own a business, right? If we own and operate a business, we should protect ourselves from the liability of that business, right? So now we're going to put in our operating company. Operating company means this is where we generate our income. It's forward facing and it's a public facing company, right? I have a company. It's called Pennington Law, and it faces forward to the public. And I want them to know that so that they can use my services. But what I don't want is to make a mistake inside my company and be sued and have them take everything that I'm holding in my revocable living trust. So I shield myself from liability. Now, I'm putting LLC. That's one example. You can do an S corporation. You can do a corporation. All right. Typically, what I do for my clients is LLC. So we'll stick with that for now. Okay. Now, in order for that business not to go through probate, it has to be assigned at this first layer of asset protection to my trust. What that means is, actually, I'm going to switch this arrow around. This trust owns the interest of my business so that if I die, my successor trustee, the person that I selected and trusted, can step into the shoes and then take ownership and operational control of my company, right? So the idea is every asset that we own is going to point back to this trust one way or another, okay? So now let's say I'm sued inside my company. Now, my question to you silently is to ask this. If I'm sued in my company, do I want to lose all the money that my company controls, or would I want that protected? Okay. I think the answer is super clear. I'd rather have it protected. So what we're going to do is we're going to create, and I'm going to call this either a management company or a holding company. Now, the difference between a management company and a holding company, for our purposes, we don't need to think of them very much different for a general understanding of asset protection, right? But what I'm doing with this company is I'm shielding it from lawsuits. I'm saying, look, if I have $1 million in my operating company and I get sued, I don't want that taken. So what I'm going to do is create this management company or holding company, and I'm going to transfer I'm going to do a dotted line. And I'm going to transfer the money from my operating company to my management or holding company. Right? Now the money is sitting up here. And the reason I created this in a dotted line was because this is anonymous. Nobody knows that I've done this, right? So when you're looking at this graph now, or this diagram, when you see something in solid, I want you to push it forward in your brain. And when you see something that's in a dotted line, I want you to push it back behind the scenes that nobody knows about. Here's the first rule. You can't sue something that you don't know exists. So the state that I use for this is Wyoming. Why Wyoming? Right? The reason for Wyoming is it is a private state, meaning it holds your privacy. So when somebody looks up and I've created this management or holding company for you, and they go, even if they knew the name, which they don't, but let's say they knew the name of it. When they looked it up, it would say Andre Pennington, an asset protection attorney from Pennington Law, created this entity for somebody. And then when you're working with an attorney, I'm going to be hyper. I'm going to inflect what I'm saying here because I want you to get the point. When you're working with an attorney, you have attorney-client confidentiality. So if an attorney creates this for you and the creditor says, I want to know who that is and sends a subpoena, I can say, we have attorney-client confidentiality. I'm not disclosing that. Right? Now, if a tax professional does this, or if someone else does this, or if you do it for yourself and you get a subpoena, guess what you have to do? Disclose. So I'm really emphasizing, this isn't a plug for me. I'm going to be honest. I don't care if you use me or not. I'm hoping to educate in this moment, right? Using an attorney protects you, right? Now, if we get this far, remember what I said earlier, we always want the level of asset protection that we're at to dump into our foundational revocable living trust. So what we're going to do is we're going to eliminate that. And we're going to move that to the next level. We want our trust to now own this anonymous entity that nobody knows about. A lot of times, what I'm going to do is have the management. If it's a management company, money is just transferring. If it's a holding company, it actually owns the operating company. I'm not going to talk about the differences of that because we don't have enough time for me to get through everything. But let's pretend it's now our holding company. I'm going to bold that because that's the decision that we've made, which means it owns the operating company. So now if I die, my trustee can step in, take control of the holding company, which is holding all the money that can't be sued, that we can't be sued and have it taken, which now owns the operating company. And it has control of the entire entity that we create, right? I'm going to remind you the regular trust is going to hold most of your assets. Now we've protected our business interests. And inside of this model, we can create, maybe we're going to create a real estate portfolio, right? So off of here, maybe this is my real estate company. Okay, so now we've created our real estate company. For our rental. Right? I'm going to put that in a, go ahead. 100% correct. Right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in underneath here, this owns my rental property. Now, if you own it free and clear, it's usually going to go straight into an LLC. That LLC protects you from your renters if something goes wrong. Let's say a fire breaks out, somebody dies in that rental. Inside of this structure, the only thing they can access is the real estate, because when the rent is paid, it's paid to the real estate company, which then funds up to your holding company. The money's protected. The real estate is the only thing they can take, but they can't take your primary residence. They can't take other things because it's contained inside there. Let's say you have $1 million brokerage. Do you want that renter to be able to take that from you? Absolutely not. Right? So the real estate, so we're going to want to divide that out. I call that siloing out. I call that siloing out assets. Right? I'm creating silos where I'm unaffected by bad events. Right? So now we have that. Now let's pretend we have that $1 million brokerage that's in our personal name. Do I want to get in a car accident and have somebody be able to take that? Probably not. Right? So what we can do is we can go up here and we can create what's called a Wyoming limited partnership. Right? And I'm going to add some tax strategy and some tips later on if we have time. So with this Wyoming limited partnership, the way a limited partnership, they're also called family limited partnerships, asset managed limited partnerships, just limited partnerships. But why I use Wyoming, and I forgot to say this the original time, the only remedy for a business structure in Wyoming is a charging order. So the creditor actually has to sue you, get a judgment, and get a charging order. Then the creditor has to put that charging order against the entity. So let's call it the management company for now, right? And what that charging order says is if a distribution comes out, then you can take that. So if a client gets sued and they actually get that charging order, which most people don't take lawsuits when they see Wyoming structures because they know it's going to be hard to collect. Because what I'll do is I'll tell my client, you know what? Take out $10. The creditor will get the $10. Then they have to go back to court, get a new charging order, and then put it against the entity again. I'm like, oh, that's weird. They didn't get the picture. Take out $9 this time, right? You pay them $9, and they got to go back to court, get a new charging order, put it against the company. You can also take loans from your company, and loans aren't distributions. So it makes it very, very difficult to collect. But when we want to take a step up, the way it works when you do a partnership is the limited partner in the partnership is completely protected from liability because they don't control the company. So we assign 99% ownership to the limited partner. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create a general partner. The general partner, we're going to assign 1% to. Now, the reason we do that is because in this scenario, the general partner's the one controlling the entity. That's why it has unlimited liability, right? So it's controlling the entity. So it has unlimited liability, but it only owns 1%. So let's say we have $1 million here. If we wanted to, we could take out all $1 million, 990,000 of it. I think that's 990. Let me do my math real quick. I always get my public math wrong. So I'm going to take 1 million times 1%. Yeah, $990,000 I can pull out, and that comes to me. And then only $10,000 goes to the creditor, because that's the 99% unlimited liability protection that I formed. Now, are we going to do that? Probably not. I'm probably going to tell you, hey, why don't you take out $100, right? You're going to keep 99, $1 goes to the creditor, and the remainder, then the creditor has to go back to court and get a new charging order. So this is representative of a $1 million brokerage. And the way I best explain that is, do we want to hold that asset in our bare hand where somebody can come through and just take it? Or do we want to switch it to the hand that we put a glove around where it's 99% protected? One of the biggest mistakes people make in wealth is that they don't protect what they build, and they can lose it in an instant. Right? And then what we do is we make the interest of our holding company owned by our partnership. Now, remember the level of asset protection that we end at, we want to make sure it connects to our trust. So what we do is we assign, now I forgot to say who the general partner is, right? So the general partner, the reason this is anonymous is that general partner is a Wyoming LLC that's completely private. You could be the manager and member of that LLC and nobody knows it. You can set up your family office controlling that LLC. Nobody knows they exist, and they're controlling the entity in a way that you're comfortable with and trust. Remember what Depot said in the beginning: own nothing, control everything. That's why you're asset protected, because you don't own the asset. Your partnership does, but you control it. And what we do is we assign the interest of the Wyoming LLC into our foundational trust, so that if we die, the person we trust as our successor trustee can step into the general partnership, which has access to the limited partnership, which holds the interest of the holding company, which holds the interest of our operating company and our real estate. Right? And in my mind, when we get up to $500,000 in assets, liquid assets that have no liability tied to it, like a brokerage, or let's say we have our family vacation rental, or not vacation rental, vacation home that we're not renting. Do I want that on the chopping block if I get sued? Or would I rather it be held in the partnership? We place the things that have no inherent liability tied to them inside the partnership for protection. Now, once we start accumulating assets, we might start to feel, well, maybe I want another level of asset protection, right? So what we do at that point is we're going to say, you know what? Why don't we make this limited partnership owned by an asset protection trust? Now, the reason we used Wyoming for business is it's the gold standard for the highest asset protection for businesses in the entire country because of the charging order protection and the anonymity and privacy. But when we switch to a trust, Nevada is the strongest asset protection territory. So we do what I do is a hybrid domestic asset protection trust. And it is an irrevocable trust. And that sounds super scary until you realize how it works. But we create an irrevocable trust in Nevada because Nevada is outright aggressive towards creditors. If you have your asset held in a Nevada asset protection trust for more than 2 years, it's presumptive. You can go in and say, hey, I did this to protect myself from the world. And the judge is going to go, great, because that's exactly what our jurisdiction was designed for. Creditors are not going to be able to get anything that asset protection trust holds. Now, why didn't we start with just that asset protection trust? Number one, it's more expensive. Number two, though, or actually it's number two. Number two is the more important one. You lose a level of control if you just use that trust because it's irrevocable. And what I like to do is I sandwich that structure between the greatest form of asset protection in the world. Okay. And that is, this trust has the ability to go offshore to the Cook Islands. Now, I was asked recently by an attorney that I trained, why not use another jurisdiction? And the answer is super, super easy. Because in the 1980s, asset protection attorneys went to the Cook Islands, which at that point was a third world country, and said, look, if you design your country's laws to be asset protection against the United States, we will turn you into the banking central of the world. And that's exactly what they did. A creditor would have to go to the Cook Islands, start a lawsuit within a very short period of time, and then they'd have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt their case. In the United States, they would just have to prove it by a preponderance of evidence. But the bigger reason is if they did it in the United States, let's say it was within 2 years. Well, now it's on you, not the creditor, to prove by clear and convincing evidence, which is the second highest standard proof, that you didn't move this in here just for protection because of the claim. In the Cook Islands, that burden shifts to the creditor beyond a reasonable doubt. They have to prove that. And attorneys in the Cook Islands cannot take a case on a contingency fee. That means, look, if we win, you'll pay me this. They don't bill that way. They can't bill that way. They have to charge you up front for the litigation. That means the creditor can't do we'll just see what happens. No, you're going to part ways with about $100,000 in a different jurisdiction, in a different country to be able to collect. Guess what's not happening? That. And what we do is we design this irrevocable trust to have the ability to go offshore, and we put a third party offshore Cook Islands trustee on standby. So now this trust is sandwiched between the greatest level of business asset protection in the country and in between, actually, I'll put it up top so we visualize it. We're creating a hamburger here. Right? It has the ability to go offshore. Keep in mind that everything in a dotted line, nobody knows is happening. Right? Nobody knows these things exist. Right? So now we have a bun on the top, a bun on the bottom, sandwiching you right in between the strongest asset protection. It's so strong, I feel comfortable allowing you to be trustee of your trust now. Right? Own nothing, control everything. Right? And then what we're going to do is we're going to have that, what is held in this asset protection structure is now going to dump in on your passing into your foundational trust to make sure everything you own goes to your family, right? So I'm going to scroll out a little bit so we can see how the structure works, right? Now, everything held in the asset protection trust, right? The asset protection owns the limited partnership. The general partner controls the partnership, which controls the holding company and the operating company, your real estate portfolio, and any other operating company you want to bring about. So it's all connected under one ownership. The top half of this is completely anonymous. You can't sue what you can't find. And that's the idea of basic asset protection. Let's do it. Yeah, great question. So when I'm doing asset protection, what I'm looking at is we have level one. We've started a business. We want to protect ourselves. Now we are earning income in that business and we want to protect ourselves from the loss of that income. Here's level two. Now we're starting to gain assets outside of our company. So we go to level three. We can do just a Nevada asset protection trust. That's level four. And then we have the highest form of asset protection, which is level five. Not everyone needs all five levels. I just told you how strong this limited partnership is, and I told you why we use it. So if you don't have a brokerage with money in it, and you don't have land that's a secondary home, and you don't have any of that, you don't need it. It can be held instead by your revocable trust, right? So in my mind is when we're profitable and we don't want to lose our money in an operating company, we do a holding company, right? Think of the charge on that, maybe around $1,500 to create that. And we're good there for a while. But as you build assets and you create a brokerage or a home for yourself, a vacation home, right? Well, now you have something to protect. My rule of thumb to do the limited partnership is around $500,000. If I have $500,000 in a brokerage, now I'm not going to tell the client, no, don't protect your $300,000. But when I start seeing 500,000 or more, this is a no-brainer. The way this is typically charged is between 5,000 and 7,500 to create this structure. And that includes the general partner Wyoming LLC. Right? When you get higher, say we're now getting over 3 million in takeable assets. Right? Then I start telling clients, look, if you have over 3 million, we should add an extra layer of protection. Right? Now we're going to go up to here. And if we stop at level 4 without the hybrid version of it, and it's just Nevada, then we're going to be charging between attorneys, and it can be way more expensive, but 10 to 12,500, maybe 10 to 15,000. And it's not for the whole thing, it's each individual structure. And then when I have clients that have multi-millions, the more millions you have, the more the offshore protection is a no-brainer. You're going to add another 12,500, 15,000, maybe 10, right? I'm not going to speak for every attorney on the planet, how they charge, right? Now I made one little, yeah, that has the ability to go there, right? So in my mind, if you have millions of dollars, why wouldn't you have this structure, right? Why wouldn't you? If I have $10 million, I can protect everything. Let's call it 30,000 or 25,000. I didn't do all the math in my mind to create every structure. It's de minimis to what you've built. You built an empire. Why would you build an empire without a castle? Why would you build an empire without a moat around it? Why would you build an empire without soldiers guarding it? That's what we're talking about. And this is how very successful people make their first mistake. When you have money, you are a target, whether you think you are or not. If you get in a car accident with someone and all you have is your insurance on that car and just the car, that's a very different scenario than if you're a multi-millionaire with car insurance. All of a sudden, somebody's back hurts more. All of a sudden, their neck is injured for life. All of a sudden, they're trying to collect more than what your insurance has. And I get this question all the time. I'll get an umbrella policy. Yes, do that too. That's the moat that somebody can jump into and swim across and walk into your castle if they want to, right? But yes, we want the moat around it. But is it enough? Because the way I like to use an umbrella policy is I have one. I'm going to throw that to the wolves and hope they get full. That's a deterrent. But how do insurance companies make money? By not paying claims. What if the insurance company denies the claim and you have multi-millions? They're going to come after you next, especially if it's low-hanging fruit without any protection whatsoever. But keep in mind, this structure You have an invisible castle, you have invisible soldiers, you have an invisible moat. No one knows you even own it. They wouldn't think to sue you because they don't know you own it. Deepo, I saw you unmute for a second. Absolutely. So, and I don't sell anything. Deepo, you know this, but everybody doesn't know. What I try and do is add value to my clients. And here's the truth. If you don't have the extra assets to have the limited partnership, why would we do it? That's just extra expense with no benefit, right? So that's why I have the tiers in there. It's like, what level do you need with a capital N? Right? A capital N, need. And I'm not going to convince a client what their risk tolerance is. If somebody wants to gamble everything they've built instead of paying in a little bit, which we are creating business structures, by the way, a business structure creates a business expense. When we become wealthy, we don't think about spending money anymore. We think about how we're spending it. Right? Am I going to just pay this to the government, or am I going to have something by using it in a productive way? That's how wealthy people think. And then what we have now is we have the keys to the tax code, right? And because we have a little bit more time, I'm going to speak on it a little bit. Most people are afraid of the tax code, not realizing the tax code was drafted by people that understood that if you use this correctly, you're not going to pay taxes. Let's say you have $50 million, $100 million, right? Well, we're not going to feel comfortable with this revocable living trust anymore. We might want to create a dynasty trust. We might want to do that out of Wyoming because it never ends and lasts for generations, right? And what it does is it protects what you have over 15 million or 30 million as a married couple from being taxed at 40%. Those taxes are dumb taxes. They're ignorant taxes. You only get hit with those taxes when you don't reach out to a professional to understand the rules, right? So off of $100 million, do we want 85 million of it taxed at 40%, or we'd rather use a dynasty trust? What if I told you that Deepo understands and knows how to create products and services through the financial industry that would create a privatized bank right inside that dynasty trust, just like the Rockefellers do? What if I told you that he knows how to do the same thing based off of your business gross revenue that would come right off this management company? Privatized banking. What if I told you that you can leverage that money? It can grow completely tax-free while you're spending money on your business expenses. And that when you stopped working, you'd have something similar to a Roth IRA that is growing forever, compound interest without the possibility of losses. And that's what a wealth attorney means. When people ask me what I do, it didn't feel comfortable saying estate planning, asset protection. That is not what I do. I understand wealth and the structures that blend within them to give you a greater impact, both protection, financially, and tax strategy. And when you get to this level, you want a tax strategist, not a compliance officer that just tattles on you for what you did. You're going to want someone to show you how to use this effectively. Hey, let's leverage some of the money we were going to pay in taxes to get protection. Let's leverage some of the money that we were going to pay in a paper loss. I want to show you a strategy in real estate that's going to create a paper loss for you so that you can now have an appreciating asset that builds your wealth, but not pay taxes on it. And when you blend it perfectly, no one can take anything from you. You're keeping more of what you worked hard to have, and you're creating this through generations. And if it's good enough for the Rockefellers, it's good enough for you. And that's the structure that we create totally around you. And we build it at the level that you need. Missing this step, right? I want you to think about your company you own right now and how hard. If you're anything like me, right? The IRS is not getting up with me at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. It's not staying up with me late when I have something I have to do and I'm up at 2 a.m. They're not with me. Why should they take something from me? Right? I've made one little mistake. Should I lose the entire empire that I spent my entire life building up to this point? The answer is absolutely not. But if you fail to plan, the results are catastrophic. And that's the point of this message. You should have the asset protection at the level that warrants protection for you. And then we grow towards the other levels. And you need a professional in your corner that understands when you're there. So I intentionally tried to talk about this for 45 minutes. So if there were any questions, I could answer them or Deepo could answer them. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. I'm going to tell a personal story. Um, the reason I am the way I am is while I was in law school, my grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Trust and believe I was not thinking about estate planning as a young mid 20-year-old in law school, right? But what stood out to me is my grandmother lived in a one street town within a mile of my aunt. And because she got sick and something bad happened, the state took over and took everything. And I couldn't believe it. And then I started thinking, why do the Penningtons start over every generation? Because we failed to plan, right? That was avoidable. Your foundational trust is protecting your family, right? And there's conversations that come out of that, right? We have a foundational trust, right? We should have a certain amount of life insurance in case something happens to us to protect our family. That's where Depot steps in, right? We should use all those things to our advantage for our protection. What if I get sick? What if I am killing it in my job and I get sick and I can't work? Where does the extra money come from? Those are the things Depot solves for you, right? So we create this trust to avoid a horrible court experience for our family and to protect our assets. When I say protect, I mean protect them from probate court where there's extra losses. Why would we want to pay all those extra fees? Why would you want to pay an attorney like me my hourly rate for an entire year so that your family can get the things that you wanted them to have? Estate planning is about caring enough about our family and what we've done Is there a drawback? I see a message here. Is there a drawback with the living trust? Is there a loophole that gives the probate court access? The drawback with the living trust is you have to do it correctly, right? And that's too much conversation for this one moment. But a proper trust, you design the trust as a safe on top. Whatever's held in that safe can't drop to probate. But you have to title your assets correctly to the trust. When I brought up the diagram, I kept showing you how I kept titling things so that the trust ultimately controlled it. Because if the trust says it owns a house, but that house is not deeded to the trust, it can't control the house. So the drawback is, yeah, there's a little bit of red tape. You got to make sure everything connects. But as long as everything connects, there is no probate court. Probate court is public. It's expensive. A trust takes you out of that court system and gives you a private administration that nobody knows what's going on with it. We don't have to disclose what our heirs get. We don't have to disclose their names in a public setting and the assets in a public setting. So a revocable living trust is the beginning block for caring and building structure. Think of it as the roots. People don't understand this. I understand it to the core of my being, right? Because I've been through every step. I didn't have somebody hand me something. I had to build it brick by brick without mentors, and I've made every mistake in the book, right? So the point I'm making is this: those are the roots of your foundation. And when you have a strong foundation, you skip steps that take away from you without you knowing it, right? When we add in, you may not have a business. So you have the trust that gives you a place that you use your W-2 job to create wealth and assets and transfer them. So attorneys like me don't charge you for an entire year. It only makes sense. Next question I see: what trust will you recommend for someone whose business is currently doing 2 million to 5 million yearly? What level of trust would you recommend? I mean, here's the thing. I received my training as a military attorney, and I never changed how I gave advice. What the military looks like when you're an attorney is you're the lowest ranking officer in that room, having to advise generals and colonels with you have the least amount of experience, but you're the lawyer. We don't get to tell the general or the colonel what to do. So Jess, you are the general in this situation. What I'm going to show you is what I just showed you. And then I'm going to ask you, what level do you want of protection? Now, in a $2 million to $5 million range, I would want to know assets. I would want to know what you've accumulated. And that answer to that question could change, right? So that is not enough information to tell me what I would recommend. There's lots of components I don't know about, including your personal risk tolerance. My job isn't to convince you that you should protect yourself from lawsuits. You should already know that and want that, right? My job isn't to convince you of any of this, right? But in that range, it opens up a lot of things for me. That is a range that you could potentially be creating generational wealth if you plan properly. And I'd start there in my mind and start advising from there. But if that's not in your game plan, like if I have a client that says, hey, I'm not concerned with it, then I can't be concerned with it. All right, next question I see. I am in Florida, a realtor. My real estate. Yep. Yeah, that's level one. Let me go back into my graph, right? There's a couple of things that I didn't talk about, right? So I'm showing you this whole gigantic thing. And I've been there, by the way, and not so long ago. I actually built wealth, lost it all, and had to create it again, right? Um, but this is kind of like, this could be like, oh my gosh, right? But if you have that same thing, right? I'm gonna just do something over on this side of it, right? First thing we're gonna do, yeah, if you just have a house and you're just in the beginning stages, we're gonna create that revocable living trust. We're gonna protect you from lawsuits from your business, the operating company, and we're gonna make sure that your trust owns the biggest asset you might have, your primary residence. So that will not go through probate. This trust, and this isn't an education about everything a trust does, right? I know I'm missing things because I was focused on asset protection, but this trust protects your, let's say you have minor children. Do you want them inheriting $300,000 at 18 or 100,000 or even 50,000, right? Or would you rather have rules that they have to be 25, but the trustee can use the money for their health, education, maintenance, and support, right? So if they want to go to school, the trustee has discretion for that. Or maybe you absolutely want it used for school. This gives you the ability to protect your family more. So no, I don't discriminate against anyone. I will work with anyone. The one thing I said I would never do is I wouldn't say you have to make a certain amount of money to work with me. There's a lot of professionals that do it. I'm not knocking them at all, right? But I come from nothing. Where do you think I get the best feeling from? Helping others grow. People already have. I just happen to have the knowledge, and I'm glad to help them protect it and grow it too. But everyone should have the level that they need or want, and it starts with education first. So I commend anyone on here that's listening for that knowledge. Hopefully, I answered that question. Yeah, my primary home is in a revocable living trust. My business income is 250,000, 250,000, over 250,000, less than 500,000. How do I move forward in adding a layer of protection? Based on the structure, my understanding is the added level of protection would be the Wyoming Holding Company. Am I correct? So did I see that there was a business? Yeah, so with an S corps are taxed differently and they can't be owned by other companies. Technically, a holding company. I saw myself freeze. Am I good? Okay, good. Technically, a holding company owns the other holding company, so we might want to switch that to a management company. I just want to be technical since there's going to be somebody who maybe knows and might call me out on it. But I want to think in concepts first. Well, yeah, if you want to protect that income from a lawsuit, that would be the natural step, right? Now, I'm not advising you specifically. I'm saying it's something to think about. Talk to a professional and reach out. I am telling you right now, with that level of income between what Depot knows on his side and the structures I create, you're leaving money on the table if you don't do it. And that's a fact, right? So when you get to when you get to any level of having something, I'm not discriminating. If you have a primary residence that you have a mortgage on that you own, right? You should start thinking about planning, right? What happens if you die, right? Say that's the only thing you have, right? Who's going to pay that mortgage if you die? Maybe life insurance, right? Get with a professional that can start with wherever you're at and just start building from there. I don't have a public opinion on contract trusts. Everybody's situation is different, right? I remember I had a client once who had a business with alcohol, and I think they were called the wash rules or something like that. I don't even remember, but there he couldn't have other investments that were tied to that in certain ways, and a business trust became a thing that was super super important to have. But would I offer it to just anybody? No. What I'm going to look at is what's your situation? What are we trying to protect against? What are your goals? I'm going to give you the proper advice. So that's not a trust that I use regularly or that I don't have a public opinion. If it solves a problem, I'm going to recommend it. If it doesn't, I'm not. Okay. Yeah, I don't privatize look like it's spelled wrong to me. So if it is, just forgive me on that. Uh, everybody makes errors. Don't judge me. Yeah, I'll elaborate on it a lot actually. Are we switching screens here? Did Are we now looking at my be your own bank strategy? Okay. So with that privatized banking, it looks like this, right? So this is something the Rockefellers created, and if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us, right? So what you can do is that out of that privatized banking, right, you can have this better bank account that I call it under IRC 7702. It grows tax free under um, under 101J. It could be tied to a company. I'll lowercase that. Okay. It grows off the S&P 500 at 110%, takes no losses. It's going to average 7 to 10% tax-free growth. Has 70 to 90% liquidity. We can build it higher within 48 hours, and it allows you to take loans. Now, keep in mind when we go back to this structure, let's say you are sued. Well, if we can take a loan from here, we could pull it out to ourselves. And guess who can't get it? The creditor. So it creates a structure that the creditor can never collect on if we hold the money over here, right? And what I like to show business owners is look, put your money in there. It's a capital reserve. You can pull it out and use it. But if you create a 30-day lag cycle, you can use it for free, right? You use a credit card to pay the business expenses, do it with cash back. You get free cash because you're going to borrow against the policy to pay the credit before the interest hits on the credit. And then your business income is going to refund back into this policy and pay off the 5% loan before that hits, which leaves you 7 to 10% tax-free growth arbitrage off of money that you're going to spend anyway, right? And when you understand how money works, it makes sense. A lot of times what we'll do at the diagram level, we might elect to be treated like a C corp to get better tax treatment on this, right? Now, I'm in Arizona and I have season tickets to the Suns and they play tonight and I have to get to that game. So I hit it really quickly. I'm sorry, Depot, that I didn't expand more. But what I will say is this: Depot is an absolute expert at that. And if you want to know more, reach out to him and he'll explain it to your heart's content. Right? What we do is we put a team around you that will benefit you. And as much of the team as you need is the team we're going to surround you with. All right. So that was my really, really polite way of saying I've got to go. But if there's any burning questions or anything else I need to address, let's do it. Hey, Deepo, thank you so much for inviting me on and allowing me to spread knowledge. I hope to all the listeners that are out there that you got something helpful out of it. And this wasn't meant to give you everything you need to know. It was meant to give some education so you could start spotting some warning signs in your own life and to help you protect yourself and the ones you love in a much better format than maybe you are right now. And it starts with education, right? Awesome. Love you guys. I hope you guys got something out of it. Talk to you soon. All right, my friend.